Hey everyone, it's Angela Allen. Welcome back to the Handmade Homestead. Well, today is number 22 in the Every Bit Counts challenge, put on every year in the month of August by Three Rivers Homestead. 10 days left to this year's challenge and we are still coming in strong. Today we're going to talk about processing pumpkins. Now these aren't your traditional pumpkins. These are what a Kabocha Squash, or a lot of people, depends on where you live, Japanese Sweet Pumpkins. Some people just call them pumpkins. In other places like Australia, there's a lot of names for them. But no matter what you call them, well, I think Italians call them delicatata. The reason that we're processing these today and not waiting for winter is because these had to come off the vine. My great big vine out there has been attacked by vine borers, and every gardener knows what that's like. So the vine that these two were on was shredded. It was a mess. They weren't getting any more nutrition. It was time to get them off before they started being infected themselves. So I did remove them. They do have that hard skin that says I could leave them in this form and they would be perfectly fine to cure and keep through the winter. And I might do that with one of them. But this was another thing. This is a Tromboncino squash. And the reason I refer to it in the pumpkin category, when these are young, I know they're huge. I know they're huge. When they're young, you can use them just like you would a zucchini. Once the skin starts to turn this kind of pink stage that you can see here, if you let them go, they will become very hard skinned on the outside. They will have like a creamy pink colored flesh, just like a butternut squash, and you can eat them just like a butternut squash. So because this one is already ripened to the point it's starting to get that pinkish hue and the skin is hard, I can't really leave much of a nail print in it. That means the squash inside here is probably a nice yellow orange, and it can be processed just like a winter squash. In fact, let's break it and let's see. You ready? See if I can break it. There we go. Yep, you can see the inside of it is already yellow. It's no longer that green color. So that yellow tells me that I can process this, put it in the freezer, and it's gonna taste just like butternut squash. And there's a lot of food in one Tromboncino squash. These things can get, well, this is at least three feet long, and they can get quite a bit longer. And quite a bit bigger around in the neck. Now usually, because they're an heirloom squash, I take the biggest one off the vine each year, and those are the seeds I save for next year. This was probably the biggest one, and it fell off when I was pruning the vines back. So I'm not going to save these seeds because I took it too early. The seeds haven't had time to mature. So we're going to eat this one. We're going to process it for the freezer because it's highly usable squash. There's no reason to throw it away just because I accidentally picked it or knocked it off. I actually knocked it off the vine. What I'm going to do is just clean them, wash them, chop them up. I'm not going to blanch them. I'm going to put these in cubes because I have quite a few bags of squash already pureed and in my freezer. I do that because I use it as a vegetable, but I also use it when I add to dog food, when I make my dogs food. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna get this one processed for sure, and probably one of these just to make sure that if they don't cure, I won't lose both of them. We'll leave one and see if it cures. And yeah, let's get going. Glad to have a little bit of an easier prep job today to add to my pantry, because it's one of those days where I have to make bread, make crackers, and do some other baking things as well. So I'm gonna be busy in the kitchen. It's nice to get this done and thrown into the freezer, and I am done with my project for today, and I can move on to projects that I have to do today just for our regular everyday life. So let's go. One of the things I'm going to do today has to do with a pantry problem. So I'm going to add it here just as a tip for something that I plan to do. I have 3 things of jam left from 2022. So I want to use these up. Now this is 2024. I have some jam from last year, not a lot, and I've already made a lot of jam this year and added it to my pantry shelf. So I want to use these up. So this is orange ginger rhubarb, and this one is strawberry rhubarb orange. So they go together really well. I'm essentially going to use these for frosting on a cake. It'll get these done, get them off I brought them up and they're in my kitchen because I want to make sure we use them first. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna bake a cake. I'm gonna spread these on top. We will have this for dessert for the next 3 days maybe. And that will get those used up and these won't go to waste. Otherwise I would have to be in the position of tossing them. So it's a pantry item that I previously put up. I don't want to waste that and I want to use up the old stuff before the new. So at least 2 of these are going to go on a great big, maybe a spice cake. That kind of sounds good to me with orange rhubarb ginger. So let's do a spice cake or a carrot cake. And yeah, we're going to add this as topping. So that's one of the things I'm doing. I'm not doing that for my challenge today, but I just wanted to tell you it's just one way I'm going to use up something that was in my pantry. So I've washed both of these squash. Let's get the Tromboncino one peeled and processed first and see how much that gives us before we start on one of these other squash. So we're going to peel this with just a regular vegetable peeler. The peel is fairly thin, but it is tough. At this stage, you wouldn't want to eat it. So I'm going to peel it all off, slice this into rounds, and dice it up. And don't worry, none of these peelings or the seeds on the inside that I remove will go to waste. All of these will go into a bowl and they'll be taken out and fed to the chickens. The chickens will love them. There are so many things I love about Tromboncino squash. The fact that it's dual purpose is a really big deal for me. It's pretty resistant to the vine borer, so it keeps producing all summer long, all the way into frost. When it's young, it is a delicious zucchini. It's slightly sweeter, but it actually freezes and thaws better. When you thaw regular zucchini that's been frozen, it tends to be really rubbery and watery, and that doesn't happen with Tromboncino. The Tromboncino holds its texture and its shape really well. It doesn't get watery, and it never tastes rubbery when you use it after being previously frozen. The other thing I love is there's no seeds in the neck. So once you peel it, you just cut it up and use it. There are seeds in that round cavity at the bottom, but they're super easy to remove. You'll see that in a minute. It's quick. You clean it, you're done. They roast beautifully. They taste just like butternut squash when they're matured and you let them become more of a gourd stage. They also keep really well. Once I bring them in and they've been fully matured and cured like you would any winter squash, they literally will last me 6 months or more. I've never had them past that point, frankly, because we eat them, but they do last a really long time. I love this little chopper. I think it's the 2nd or 3rd one I've had. I did wear out my first one. You can buy them right on Amazon. They're very inexpensive. They usually come with a couple of sizes of blades. This one gives me these nice 1/2-inch chunks. It comes with a smaller blade that does 1/4-inch pieces too. They're easy to clean. It also has a slicing blade attachment, I think. I don't use that because I use a food processor if I have to slice a lot really thin. But it is really makes fast work of dicing anything. And don't let that plastic housing fool you. The metal blades on it are really super sharp. So I'm peeling the bulb the same way. It's just as easy. And we're going to cut this in half and get it seeded. All right, let's get this cut in half. It is kind of a slippery thing once you've peeled it. They do produce a lot of water, and when you cut them in half, even at the neck, they will actually drip water. You'll notice right out of them. So that's the inner cavity. Again, I'm not going to save any of these seeds. It's definitely not as thick-walled as the neck, but it's fine. And it does scoop out really easily. That's just a regular tablespoon that I've got to do this with. I find if I cut it in quarters, it's a lot faster to scoop those seeds out. So that's what I'm going to do. That's my chicken bucket. Look how easy they come out. It's not really fibrous either, like a spaghetti squash would be. And again, we're just gonna chunk these up and put them through my little kitchen helper here and cut them in the same size cubes. When I'm processing anything for the freezer or the dehydrator, and when I'm cooking it as well, I guess, I do my best to get things cut around the same size so they cook at the same time. So this turned out to be a really big salad bowl full of squash. So I'm not going to cut up the other Japanese sweet pumpkin because it's just too much to process. The Japanese sweet pumpkin would probably do better if I give it time to just cure for a few weeks on the counter before I use it. That will add to its sweetness. If I use it now, it would be perfectly usable, but it wouldn't be as sweet, just in the same way that sweet potatoes need a little time to cure for the best flavor. It's the same thing for pumpkins and other winter squashes. They need that little bit of extra time to develop their sugars. So we're gonna give that Japanese sweet pumpkin a break and just finish processing the tromboncino for the freezer and call it good for the pumpkin part of today's video. I'm very happy with the amount of squash I got from just one single vegetable. So let's get this in some vacuum seal bags and get it ready for the freezer. So this is a 1/2 cup measuring cup that I've got in my hand. It just happened to be what was handy next to me on the counter. And you can see I'm putting heaping cupfuls in. So each one of these bags is probably going to have 3.5 or so cups of cubed squash in them. And those will be vacuum sealed and frozen. Let's see how many meals we get. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 meals we'll get from that one tromboncino squash. You definitely can't beat that. All right, time for the spice part of the video. These are jalapeno peppers that came from the garden. I've got gloves on because me and hot peppers don't mix. It tends to burn my hands when they're hot. So I like to wear gloves, but you do you. Some people can tolerate it without a problem. I'm going to slice them up really pretty thin, and I'm going to dehydrate them. I like to have a few handy dehydrated so I can throw them in chili. Anything long cooking that needs a little bit of hot pepper. I usually use most of the jalapeno peppers I make in cowboy candy or pickled peppers. But in this case, I want to have just a few hot ones put aside so that I can use them in something that I need just a little piece of hot pepper in. And these aren't terribly hot, so they'll make a good addition to my spice pantry through the winter. And to be honest, I probably won't need more than this because I do use them in stuff like chili or other Mexican flavored foods. But other than that, I usually don't use jalapenos much. Now that I've got them all in slices, I'm just going to put them on one of the dehydrator racks, right directly on the rack. They won't take up more than one. I'll get this right in the machine and get them started dehydrating. And then I will have to gather some other herbs later to fill the machine because I don't like to run it unless it's full. And this is only one of 10 racks. I always try to run the dehydrator full, but I'm going to get it started with this one tray because peppers do take a little longer, and I'll fill up the rest of the tray later with some herbs or something from the garden. I always run things on the lowest temperature possible. I would rather dehydrate a little longer than caramelize the sugar and give it a burnt flavor or lose quality in the finished product. Well, that ends day 22 in the Every Bit Counts challenge for me. I will see you tomorrow for day 23. Like and subscribe.